hear me? I hope.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening. Let me just introduce you, Luca. Welcome to L'Aperitivo Parla this Thursday evening with Luca Montuori from Rome, who's going to be talking about farming and feeding the city. Over to you, Luca. It's all yours.
So, good evening, everybody. I won't have let's say, a classic speech. I really appreciate this formula of aperitivo. So let's have a speak between friends and people that are interested in the same issues. I was very curious about the format that Richard was proposing, even the themes that are on the table about feeding cities, because we are working very hard in Rome about the problem of food policies, and we are involved since we are actually in the administration 3-4 years, trying to improve the role of agriculture inside the city as an element of development of strategic assets of the city of Rome. Rome is one of the main agricultural capital cities in the world, in Europe. We have a structure of our territory or our landscape that is characterized by a strong connection through built and not built areas with different scales, landscapes that arise until the center, really center of the city. So as we have this kind of very interesting idea of connection of landscape, agricultural landscape and city, we want to improve this that we call not an identity, because I don't like the word identity. You know, I always use it as a plural word, identities, but more as a vocational development of the city. As we are convinced that we are living in the urban era, and in 2050, most of the 2/3 of population will live in cities. We think that access to food, the right to food, not only as an access to an adequate level of feeding people, but to the right to live free from the hunger of people living in the cities will be one of the most important rights to preserve with interesting policies inside cities, because food policies and the food system, let's say, as is it called, system is interesting because it's not the problem of feeding people, but even to maintain rights of people that is working around food problems, social relationship between people that use agriculture even as a social element to grow up vegetables inside the city, to have a subsidiary relationship with landscape in the city. It means improve research and innovation in food. This is one of the most important things, because we have to think that in the last 50 years, people on the earth has grown 10 times population on the earth, and access to food is one of the most important things, because we have to improve production without having danger for the health. So this is one of the main important things. We don't have to think that doing the things as the old people did could be sustainable for the future. Otherwise, we risk to have food just for rich people. That is not our aim. So research and innovation for us, and the idea of, as we call it in Italian, trasferimento tecnologico. So connection between people that makes research and people that use research inside about agriculture. Then there's a problem of food and economies, and of course a problem of logistics inside the city. Logistics also is very, very important, and after the pandemic and COVID-19, we had this strong problem about reaching people. And what is important, for example, in Rome, that is the networks, for example, of small local markets was very, very important. The network of public markets in Rome has played really a strong role in COVID-19, and we had a very interesting architectural design contest to redesign one of the most important markets in Rome, in Piazza San Giovanni di Dio. Is a very huge area, about 1 hectare of with 150 banks. I don't know how to call it, small banchi del mercato, market, let's say, selling places. And exactly, we asked to architects and people, experts about food, to rethink completely the relationship between the public space and the market, and through the market and logistic problems. We have found, for example, the delivery through the bikes that is being completely new for Rome after the COVID-19. So moving with different ways of mobility and so on. So we found in this moment the way to approve, as I showed before, the strategic plan for food policies in Rome. That is here is an anteprima, a preview. Is a plan that we worked on with more than 80 experts through 1 year of work with experts from universities, from agricultural organization of Rome, Camera di Commercio, the Commerce Chamber of Rome, and FAO experts, and so on. And it focuses especially on the specificity of the relationship between Rome and food, with the idea that Rome can play really a role inside this food connection through cities and food. We were discussing before the aperitivo also through what is also importance, why. So I'm a councillor for urban design. So why the councillor of urban design is discussing about economical strategies and food strategies, and why we decided to have an office, a special office in Rome, to work on this strategic plan, connecting the councillor for economical development and urban design, because we think that the idea itself of govern the territory, the relationship between landscape, so built and natural landscape in the city, plays a role fundamental in developing food strategies, because we have to manage different scales of production. So through the huge areas, through the small plots that are related to people, that is growing new social networks through agriculture. So this is very, very important. And in this planning, we have found a place in Rome that is very important, that is called Santa Maria della Pietà, that is the old mental hospital, the asylum of Rome, that has been closed 50 years ago, 40 years ago. That is a fantastic historical complex in Rome, very interesting as architecture. It's a circular plan in a wood of 30 different pavilions, completely in a huge park that today is completely abandoned. So only a few of these pavilions are used. And we are working with the regional council and the sanitary society of Lazio, the ASL is called, Azienda Sanitaria, local sanitary office, let's say, to renew all the complex, basing this idea of a new wellness park, as they decided to call it, through three main issues. One is, of course, wellness with the sanitary vocation. So the ASL is working on a few pavilions where actually they store the vaccine supply, the vaccine to bring it then in the hospital of Rome. So they are restoring a few pavilions for sanitary reasons. Then cultural, also a series of pavilions will be involved in cultural projects. There is already a museum of the idea of a mental hospital, and then theaters and so on. Then there are some offices from the municipality of Rome, and then a few pavilions will be dedicated completely to food strategies activities. So the idea is to restore 3 or 4 of these pavilions to host startups or industries or researchers, someone that is interested in staying in Rome for a few time, for a short time or a long time, to have to rent a place, with the idea that in this area could happen that all activities, all the demonstration, all the idea of food could be part of a new relationship between citizens, research technologies, people that need to know researchers, and so on. So around this project, we are developing a huge area, because nearby the Santa Maria della Pietà hospital, we have the old agricultural park of Rome, that is in the area of Santa Maria della Pietà, and this area is the connection through different very huge parks of Rome that arrives until the Fiumicino and the sea. So it's very interesting also as a territorial landmark of this idea. So, and is about 10 minutes rail from the Vatican City. So even tourism can be completely deterred only from the idea of the center of Rome. You know, we in Rome, we have this problem. We have the Colosseum and the Imperial Fora in the center. So people arrive, stays a few hours there and then leave. So the idea of a different tourism, because through Santa Maria della Pietà past the Francigena, that is an old pilgrims road that arrives from Rome through until England, and is very, very important. And we have 2 hostels, for example, also in the pavilions of Santa Maria della Pietà. So connecting the idea of different tourism, of the research about food and culture, is really one of the main projects that would show the idea of food policies we are developing in the city. And also another very important thing is that inside the network of Urban 20, because Urban 20 is a network of cities that host the capital cities of the G20 nations. Urban 20 every year makes a meeting through cities and share a document that will be part of the G20 discussions. And we asked in the last 2 editions that food policies had to be part of this document. And it's very important because this year the G20 will be in Italy, and Urban 20 will be hosted by Rome and Milan, with an idea that Rome is the capital of the Mediterranean area of Italy and Milan is the capital of the northern part of Europe. So in this idea of a strong access between these two cities that are only linked by as subscribers of the Carta di Milano that was written after the Expo 2015 in Milan. So we are really working because these themes of feeding the cities, back to the aperitivo idea, had to be part of the political agenda of cities around the world. Just last thing, because we were discussing about the SDO idea in Rome, that was an old idea of concentration of public offices in a part of the city. We are working on the idea to build a new, strong, modern representative pole of Rome around the high-speed train station, because we are convinced that the idea of Europe and the idea of feeding cities in Europe is very typical of a region that doesn't have megalopolis, you know, like Africa, China, or the east of the world, because we work really as one metropolis. So if it's possible to go in 3 hours from Naples to Milan, passing through Rome, it's clear that we have to connect all the city through high-speed trains and work as one big megalopoly in Europe, and having agriculture through cities as an element of this big new idea of city, of regional city in Europe. This is something we are trying to discuss now, even to imagine models of development of cities and a new relationship between cities and areas around, not only inside, as I'm discussing now, because we have many areas that are shrinking areas, abandoned areas of agriculture, very important. For example, nearby Rome is all the area that goes from Roma to Viterbo and then to Grosseto, where Richard is and where really he knows. So all the Maremma area is a shrinking area that we have to improve as an area to settle people, to have new relationship with landscape and with the idea of agriculture. For me, this is the main idea, is to work through the cities as a huge metropolis and providing new facilities in the countryside, help people to live there, to work again on the territory and on the landscape, because this is the richness of Europe, not only of Rome or Italy. And this, I think, is the future of the idea itself of city in Europe. So a relationship between centers, not through states, because nations has shown their not so interesting, let's say, status through new economies, but an idea of a connection through cities. Because, and I'm coming back to the idea that where I started, the future, let's say, challenges of the world are in cities, because people is moving through cities, and in 2050, 2/3 of world population will live inside cities, and feeding people will be the challenge of the future. I think more or less these are the things we are working on in Rome, and there are many things, because of course agriculture means also circular economies, new ways of economies, and new opportunities of growth that are not only, as we're discussing also before, real estate or financial, let's say, forces that try to use cities as an element for investments that doesn't have any interest for people that really live inside the city. So this is more or less what we are working on. In Rome, I hope, and I took half an hour, is really a lot for, Richard asked me for 15 minutes, so sorry, it was too long.
No, it's been 20 minutes, it's fine. Okay. No, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, but before I do that, does anybody else have a comment or a question or a doubt? Because the meeting is for all of you to chip in. If anybody wants to say anything. In which case, let me ask I have a two-part question. Briefly, you have a 200-page document in front of you about Rome. There must be some objectives in it. Are there one or two very clear objectives which drive the whole thing? And the second thing is, given that what I've seen, that most of the urban food plans seem to be driven by the cities themselves rather than by national policy, are there any national objectives that you need to include? Because if we were talking about education or health, the state has a role. Food seems to be something that isn't discussed particularly at a national level. So have you had to refer upwards to set standards and objectives for food security, health or whatever, or is it really a city-based set of objectives?
So let's say two objectives. One is very important for us, is the connection between food and tourism, for example. That is very important because it means to preserve and to look at the landscape as a resource to preserve and to use through agriculture, and to be part of a new ways to look at the landscape. Because until today, landscape in Rome has been only seen as a way to transform it through building new houses, let's say. So this is one of the main things. And then the other thing is very, very important, we didn't speak before, is the idea of logistics. So how food moves inside the city and how to provide fresh foods, because this is another characteristic of Rome, is the role of fresh foods inside public markets in a very, very deep connection with the people that goes to buy food. So the idea to rethink and to restore some markets is very, very important, because with the COVID-19, markets played really a strong and a very, very important role. So the food system of Rome had a good, the COVID had an impact on the food system of Rome, but the food system of Rome had a good reaction because of this idea of logistics. So to improve these two elements, but there are many, many others, like improving, of course, biological cultivations, to have a different idea from production to transformations of food. So having a kind of DOP of the Roman area, we are introducing the municipality DOP denomination. So the small areas inside Rome have a typical food systems. So it's very, very interesting, because the document analyzes how the people relate with foods, how they buy food, how they use it, and which are the supply chain, the main supply chains of the city. So fruits and vegetables, cereals and derivatives of cereals, olives, wine, milk and cheese supply chain, meat and fish. So these are the main elements of the analysis and how they grow in connection with the city. Then you asked me for national policies.
Yes.
I think that in Italy we have regional policies. So regions manage, for example, all funding from Europe and the relationship with agricultural producers are managed by regional government. So the idea and the problem of Rome is that Rome is is a city region, let's say, because the problem of shrinking cities around Rome is related to the presence of Rome itself. So policies of Rome and region should be more connected. This is important in the discussion we are having about empowering the city of Rome as a capital city, that we have a strange status different from other capital cities of Europe. So we should discuss this role and have a different connection between the regional powers and the capital city powers. This is my idea, but I think that is also the answer to your question. That is not because, of course, it's completely different, the landscape through Emilia-Romagna and Lazio. The cultivations are completely different between Sicily and Lazio. So Sicily has cereal production that is enough for all Italy. Lazio is the biggest fruit and vegetables market of Italy in the center. Again, in Emilia-Romagna, we have cereals and derivatives from cereals, grano and flours and derivatives. So the different areas and regions of Italy have different vocation, and I think that we should have biggest region, let's say, maybe 3 or 4 regions, agricultural regions, and more powers to the city related to these regions. So we should have really a reformation of the idea itself of nations inside Europe. We should cut the nations and leave cities and regions, smaller regions, more different status. But we are dealing with Rome. Next life we will deal with Europe.
After you, if there's anybody.
Hello. Can I, Richard?
Yes, briefly, and then Poa, did you want to say something? First, John, and then Poa.
Yes, very quickly. Luca, yes, very interesting. I've been living in Rome for 20 years, and I chose really to come here. And I was very struck by, and I've lived before in Bologna and in Milan for 7 years. What has particularly struck me, and the reason why I wanted to come to Rome, is what you were talking about the landscape. And what I think has been, COVID, I think has also accentuated and highlighted, is and you touch upon in your speech, was the fact that there is a tremendous amount of, the spatial geography of Rome, that there is a tremendous amount of green space in Rome, and it's particularly compared to Milan. So I think actually Rome as a European city has one of the lowest densities of population per square meter, and this is something that strikes me more and more about Rome, and why I like it here. I mean, Rome of the 7 hills, and talking about tourism and landscape, it's true. I think the conception of most tourists coming to Rome from abroad is it's the center, it's the archaeological center, it's ancient Rome, very concentrated and focused in the center of Rome. And yet, what also I think is very unique about Rome is the landscape, is the tremendous amount of green space, of parks within the city itself, the Park of Veo. Even alongside the Tiber, very close to the center, you can still occasionally see sheep grazing, along there, which is pretty extraordinary. And so, this idea of Rome also being able to attract people and to draw tourists potentially away from the center and out into other areas of the city, and neighboring landscape areas just outside Rome towards Fiumicino, as you were mentioning, I think it's very interesting. But I was interested to know your view about this. I mean, obviously there are problems of logistics and transport in Rome historically because of difficulties in building metro stations and transport. But do you share with me the feeling that that Rome does actually, in this, particularly in this times of COVID, you know, it does have a huge potential precisely because it has so much space, and it's exploiting that space in a clever way, in a connected way, that is really a big opportunity.
Yeah, I would really discuss it. We need 3 or 4 hours, because I completely agree with you. The problem of density of Rome is the mess of Rome, the low density of the city. We have a city that's spread out in the countryside, completely with low density. That is the real reason why we don't have metro lines, because we don't have enough density to justify the cost of a metro line. So we are not New York, we are not Paris. So to have a metro line, you need density. So the lines, the metro lines in Rome are at 4, is the maximum we can imagine, let's say. But the COVID-19 revealed the importance of these huge spaces where people could go out and reach a park in a few minutes and stay outside. A son and a daughter, they are 20 years old and 18. I think that we will have a generation completely shocked by the COVID itself, because the lack of sociability, even during the war, didn't happen in this way. So parks played really an important role. And the idea we were working, that is called the Green Ring of Rome, and if you want, I can send you some, if you email me, the idea of having to work on a new, let's say, landscape connections inside the city, leaving some areas free, bringing the same buildings in a more dense area, so densifying some areas, but leaving huge green areas as a proximity areas. We have a problem in Italy. We still have some rules that are dated 1968 that are called the standards. So everyone has the right to 9 square meters of green in proximity of the house. Sometimes the rules bring us to make some small, very triste, I don't know, very painful gardens.
Sì, sono a casa, stavo seguendo un webinar in inglese.
I hear some.
No, tanto fra poco chiudevo. Dimmi tu.
Sento delle voci di sottofondo. I hear some voices.
Okay, it was
that changing this idea of standards and going through a new idea of relationship through landscape and city, and admitting that today's public space is not the piazza, traditional piazza where you go at 6 o'clock when you have finished to work, but is an area where you practice sport. You go and have 50 kilometers on Sunday by bike with your mountain bike, things that my grandfather didn't do. He hated the landscape, my grandfather. No, you imagine in a garden. We had a common garden in my house that is a palazzina, typical from Rome, 8 apartments with a garden. He neither imagined to go there. Now we are all the people that live to have a small plot there. So we have to completely change this idea. So the idea of this green ring around Rome is the idea to connect the regional railways, so to have new stations, for example, that help people to go in the Appia Antica Park, because we don't have tourists enough in the Appia Antica because it's very difficult to reach it. So we have a station we planned just to help people to go there, that are useful even for people that need the train to go to work, but even to access some green areas of Rome. So to have this new metropolitan idea and regional, as I said, idea of the city that can be spread if you have the possibility to move inside the city. That is the new democracy, is to access the city. We need 10 years to do that, but if you don't start to plan it, we will never success. If we just have the problem of a success in the first 2 years of our government, as it happens, because everybody asks you results, not planning. So I really would like to, if Richard want to invite me for another aperitivo, I can speak about the Anello Verde and this problem of landscape and public space in contemporary city that is completely different from the idea we have today.
Let me bring in somebody else. I just want to say that recently I've heard a lot about the 15-minute city, and I had a speaker a few months ago talk about the 1-minute city. Yeah. Rome is still about a 2-hour city.
Yeah.
If you want to go to somewhere you need to get to in Rome, you've got to pay 2 hours to be certain to do it.
Yes, but nobody says that Paris, 15 minutes city of Paris, is just in the center of Paris.
Right.
Don't tell to someone that lives in Milan-Senart or on the RR that is living in 15 minutes from Louvre, because he will beat you with the...
But it's sloganizing, and the French are probably better at it at the moment than others. But anyway, Poa,
marketing.
Yeah. I think I'm quite interested to hear that agriculture as such, or urban farming, is becoming, a strategic pillar for the developing of the city. Going back to what John said, I also have the pleasure of living here in Rome. And what attracted me to Rome are its green spaces. But what I've also experienced over time is that they're extremely underutilized. Yeah. Not only in terms of the accessibility, which is different, but either they lay bare, they are bewildered, they are not maintained, they're inaccessible. Just for example, I live close to the cupola in San Pietro. I have a small fattorietta here under my house of about 3 acres, 4 acres. And the only thing which is there is a small little community initiative, which is a little farm, which is great for the children which are around. But if we want to bring food or agriculture close to people, the question is, why is there not any kind of farming initiative there which reconnects people with the concept of farming? Because what I see in Berlin or in London or in Paris, where I mainly work, is that urban farming has become almost sexy, because there's a lot of investment, a lot of interest, because of these threats we're all facing in the future, in cities, how to get food, how to feed the city, also, the issues in regards to building a resilient city. So the question is, as part of this plan, which is now being put together, will there be a drive towards reconnecting the city, reconnecting Romans, to food production? Not necessarily what's happened out in the other regions of Lazio or in the Maremma, but in the city, which is huge, we know, but reconnecting the people, because at the moment there's a huge thing. We go to the supermarket and pick something off the shelf, regardless of where it comes. Yes, we go to our local mercato, but we still don't know where the stuff comes from. So I think what I'm interested to hear is, will there be some initiatives which reconnect us as citizens of the city to the concept of farming, our children to the concept of farming, my children to little 8-year-olds. They are in awe. So, and the same would be true if they would pull a carrot out of the ground. So my question is, part of this overall strategy, which is also the economic development strategy, I assume, what kind of initiatives would be put into place to bring food closer to the people, or agriculture closer to the people? And as John said, I think there's a huge opportunity here.
I completely agree. And the idea to reconnect people with the idea of farming is exactly the reason why we decided to work on the old mental hospital of Santa Maria della Pietà, to have a place where this idea itself of Rome as an agricultural city can be shown to people. So people can understand that Rome has that idea in itself. Because what is impressive is, so a lot of the landscape of Rome is abandoned. Okay, that's true. And there is an easy reason, because owners of land are convinced that their land is something that can be transformed in buildings, let's say. Since the 60s, this has been the idea. The fantastic map of the latifondo in Rome can be superimposed to the actual map of Rome, and to recognize in quartieri of a neighborhood that has exactly the shape of the owners of the limits
Plot
of all the
land.
all agricultural properties. But is also true that there are a lot of initiatives, for example, of let's say informal initiative of people that is using these landscapes abandoned. And it's very important. For example, last year we have a sentence from the tribunal that said that people that took care of a piece of ground now are the owners of that piece of ground. Because so it's the first time. So we are waiting what happens, because it's the first level of justice. Then we have the second, then we have the third. But the problem is that during the 90s and the 2000s, what happened is that a lot of construction rights has been spread out in the countryside of Rome, of people that is not building because it's not economically interesting now, but is living, you know, these areas just waiting something that happens. The idea of Anello Verde is trying also to reintroduce an old concept that is called civic use of land. Very, very old, that is related more to the commons of England than to today's scheme, that is today is private or public, doesn't exist nothing in the middle. And this is the idea of building a law about commons that is based on the use of things instead of owning things. And I think that we should have the possibility to use taxes to help people to leave their properties to someone that use it according with some lines, strategic lines of the municipality. So it's very complex, because we should need an help. I would make you an example. There is a ground that is a building site. It can be built, okay, but we would use it as a garden. We would open it, and the owner agrees. he said, okay, I actually am not building there, so you can use it as a garden. And people build there some banks and so on. Yeah. And we are discussing because he said, okay, you can use it, but please, I'm paying taxes there as an area that has some building rights. So is as an area that can be built. So if you can sell these taxes, I will leave you. But for us, it's impossible to cancel taxes because these taxes comes from government. And there is the idea of having a capital city that has to manage its territory. Understood. And this to have this flexibility to introduce some small rules, no, maybe to lower some or to high some taxes. For example, making taxes on empty houses, growing tax on empty houses would be interesting for me, but I can't. So I would grow
or higher taxes on abandoned land which isn't maintained and looked after.
I don't know, but I haven't found
exactly.
No, but it could be interesting because there people is interested in having to farm that ground, to use it, and they say, okay, now we are making an agreement. They said, okay, take it. I pay taxes. I don't know why he's doing that, but
tax is the way.
On 100, okay. But this more or less, and we have a lot of abandoned sites and so on that are very interesting in to reuse, and we are trying to convince owners that are just waiting that someone arrives and give them the possibility to build up something.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Waiting. So I call them the territories of the fail of the government. You go there. A group of artists called the Stalker Italians. They had a walk around the center of Rome, in the same areas you described, nearby the Cupola of San Pietro. A 1 week tour, staying always inside the countryside, never entering the city. So they that was possible, just crossing fences and asking they found someone that have a small boat to cross rivers, for example. So they really show that there is this kind of Rome as a structure of an archipelago, where green is the sea, and the sea is the place of freedom. So, and it's the place of new public space that has been very important for the development of the city. So to discover this abandoned area and discover that they are not abandoned. They are full of people that is doing things there, that is using. And the most difficult things for people that try to govern these things is how I can feel and hear the needs of people that are in this informality and bring it into a structure that is formal, to discuss with the owners of land, to make contracts, and if it happens something, you are covered with an insurance, and so on, because we are lucky, no, that nothing happens through while you are doing something that is not legal in the countryside, no? Let's say. So this is more or less is very, you touched really the problem, is how public, because in Italy we had the law that you can, if you have a ground that is not used and I need it, I can get it and I pay, because it's a piece of ground that is nothing, I pay the value of an agricultural plot that is not so much. So the idea is that private properties are private, but in their social use, they can be taken by public powers and used for social use. So very interesting, in the Costituzione Italiana, the relationship between public and private is very interesting, but then some laws strengthen the idea that private property is more important than public properties. So we don't have powers to get the land and say, okay, we want to take it free from buildings is very, very difficult. In fact, before, we call the permission to build, we call the concessione. The public power, I am giving you the concessione, I'm conceding you to build something. You have not the right, I'm giving you the right to build it. So it changed completely in the last years. And completely this changed because, you know, in Italy, we have the country of where the Roman rules, diritto romano, the Roman right was born. So we are very, very strong to change a small word that changes a concept, that changes a way to see the world.
Interesting. Thanks.
Okay, it's past 8 o'clock, so I'm about to bring the meeting to a close. If anybody has an urgent question or something we missed, I would say I would like to invite Luca back maybe when your document is published, but in Italian this time.
Yeah.
So we can bring it down also to a more local level, the things about what people might do in Grosseto, learning from what you were doing in Rome. But when will actually your document be available to be read by people outside the city of Rome? How long do you think it's going to take?
I think 1 month maximum.
Okay.
And then I have to ask if I can translate it, but 200 pages is not so easy, to make an abstract, let's say in English.
Yes.
That's my goal.
Okay. Well, we'll give you a hand on that when the moment comes.
It's very, very important for the U20 to have an abstract in English. Not everything, because there are also a lot of things that are not so useful, but...
In which case, everybody, good evening. See you next Tuesday with Giuseppe Roma and next Thursday with our speaker from Peru. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Nice. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.